Morning.
Graças a Elcia da Cortile.
So many curious faces here. And a great way to pick up from the last speaker, yeah. So, I want you to imagine a black mirror, yeah? Now look into it. Who do you see? Who did you see 1 year ago? And who do you think you'll see 1 year from now? I spent over 10,000 hours studying psychology, and it tells us that we change all the time. In small ways, our personality changes. Very often, it can shift from hour to hour, but in big, essential ways, it changes over time, and then our life follows with it. And it turns out we're quite bad at predicting who we'll become. We're also not great at figuring out who we want to become, and we're even worse at working towards that. To most people, who they thought they'd become, who they want to become, and who they actually become are pretty different. But do they have to be? I'm here to tell you about an unusual way of shaping your personality and your life. And to do that, I'm going to use the next minutes to run you through a large-scale data set with small variations over time. And we will need to look through some tables and then apply some statistical formulas and generate averages and then analyze the tendencies. And I can already see some of you yawning on the inside. Yeah, well, I'm not doing that. What I'm doing is tell you a story about games and how to get real-life superpowers and find a girlfriend and how to lose her. And about an endless dance with yourself. Well, the story is about a friend of mine and how he changed over time. As we were growing up, back then we didn't know each other all that well, but I do know he had this fear of being alone at night. And then his parents get him a PC. And he discovers Quake. Yeah, that's a horror game. He fights his way through until eventually it helps him conquer his fear of being alone at night. Soon he becomes not only unafraid of being alone at night, but he actually starts to enjoy it. So he realizes he feels best at night, which turns out to be lucky, since he soon needs to take the high school admission exam. So my friend starts developing a habit of reading and learning till late. Everything was prepared for him to go to high school nearby. Most of his neighborhood friends were going there. Well, it was not the best high school there was, but also not impossible to get in. It was kind of a safe option. And meanwhile, he gets DVDs with Unreal Tournament. Back then, we installed games and we used CDs and DVDs to install games. So by now, he gets good at playing shooters, and he makes it to the end of the game fast, where he needs to face off the Scars Queen. That's the final boss in the game. Most of his friends couldn't beat her. She was pretty tough for a queen, and she slowly starts to haunt him. After several nights getting beaten by the queen, just as he starts to think about giving up, he manages to slay her and finish the game. Now, this felt like an achievement. Back then, even I really looked up to him for that. Now, back to real life, he needs to make up his mind about high school without even realizing defeating the queen, while others couldn't, makes him think he may also have some superpowers in real life. In fact, it gives him the courage to aim at a better high school, the best high school he knew. And using his late-night learning superpower, he manages to get in, which was cool, until it wasn't. Turns out he's a shy teen, and there are so many new people. He gets awkward around most of them. High school girls were even more scary than the Scars Queen. During those days, he starts playing Red Alert, which was exactly what he felt about his chances of ever fitting in. Back then, we didn't like each other too much. And then he discovers Sims. He starts creating characters, managing their relationships, and navigating their social situations. Slowly, this somehow gives him more courage in real-life interactions. And guess what? Sims was also popular with girls. Now he has a proper conversation topic. After years of training, he even gets a girlfriend. But before you cheer, it was a Sims girlfriend. But after more years of training, he even gets one in real life. But then he discovers StarCraft, the best strategy game ever made, and a very time-consuming one. It's a game that proves deadly to his relationship. But in a different way, it pays off. After long nights trying to anticipate 3 moves ahead and systematically outsmarting his opponents, he gets good at it, and he decides he wants to become a strategist and conquer people's attention. And he goes for it. He becomes a strategist. But strategy is pretty intense. In time, he gets busy, very busy, and we don't talk too much during that time. But years later, he discovers GTA. He hustles his way around Liberty City. He's navigating the social hierarchies and getting interested in the dynamics between characters that are so subtle and so similar to real life. He feels somewhat of a calling, wanting to know more, so he decides to do a PhD in anthropology. And that is the study of the other, the study of people. It's there he understands the relationship we have with others are largely reflections of the relationship we have with ourselves. And then we become close again. But years pass. The pandemic comes, a war starts, and the world just seems to make much less sense. Not liking that too much, my friend buries himself in work. As that was something at the very least predictable and easier to control. Problem is, in his late 30s, my friend works a lot and does almost nothing else. And it turns out it's not a good idea as he feels his joy slipping away. Days feel more and more like dragging in the trenches of a war game he used to play, Call of Duty, and the dislike for the world extends to a dislike for his own life. But just like one does in Call of Duty, he keeps pushing through. By this time, he has enough courage to push through hardship in a way that not everyone could. And then we grow apart once more. But then he discovers Red Dead Redemption 2. This is a first-person adventure game where your character evolves in time and you get to choose if you want to become a hero or an outlaw, an anti-hero. And for the first time in a game, he gets to choose his own destiny. So my friend gets inspired to change his real-life destiny and starts to gather courage to become someone new. He decides to become a psychologist. And that is when we finally become real friends. And that's also how he starts learning about all the ways in which personality changes by itself, but also how you can change it before it changes you. And that is precisely when he gets invited to do a TEDx talk and gets to stand here in front of you. And he offers me permission to tell you his story under one big condition. I only use his past to talk about the future. And the future makes everything that's happened to me look boring. Do you remember there was suddenly a lot of talk about the metaverse and then there was less of it? Well, I still think that's where gaming is heading to, in several ways. Look, the metaverse is a game at the core, a multiplayer game that expanded to become a virtual world, where you get to interact with others, but also do many other things. And it's not just one world, but many worlds, some of which are only being built, but others are already booming. In some of them, like Fortnite, the most successful game ever played, currently played by almost 700 million people. When you're done fighting, you can attend real-life artist concerts. Roblox is another huge one. 400 million people play it every month. Here, you can, for example, test your dream jobs from when you're a kid and become, for example, a firefighter and see if you're still into that. And if you're not, you can start more low-key, working in a cafe. And get paid in game currency and maybe train for your first real job. Well, if you hate your boss or want more money, you can start your own business. Let's say a cafe, your own cafe. And that can teach you a thing or two about finance and keeping clients happy. And if clients prove difficult, you can start a different kind of business in a different world. In Decentraland, you can buy land, and you can sell it, and you can build stuff on it. If things work out, you can even get married. And if things don't work out in a different world, you can get to court. That's in Horizon Worlds. So virtual world is so much more than a game. You can meet people. It has an economy. You can work jobs. You can attend events. You can explore life in many, many more ways. In fact, it's like a game with many other layers beyond entertainment, or an expanding galaxy of interconnected games. Well, my story unfolded over 30 years, but you can do all that in 3 hours if you move fast with the marriage proposal part. And that's not even the best part. Look, in classic games, you're playing a character made up by someone else with an existing path, made up by someone else as well. But in the metaverse, you're more and more free to play yourself. It's pretty lifelike. And this makes it a great boot camp for life. There are so many great twists my life took thanks to gaming. So many ways I got to know myself. But all of that was unintentional. Who knows what would have happened if I grew up in a complex virtual world? If I put intention into using it to steer my personality and then my life. 3.3 billion people are gaming around the world in various ways right now. Gaming and games aren't going anywhere. They are only getting more intense and more fun and more useful. They can be the most fun way to shape our life. It's simply up to us to use them as more than entertainment. Odds are you'll be stuck for a good part of your life in a dance of liking, hating, and then liking and hating yourself again. You might sometimes dislike yourself violently. You might even get into fights with yourself like you fight bosses in games. But I believe virtual worlds can help you be more your friend than your enemy. So whenever you see a mirror, it doesn't have to be black. Think of the person you see in it, but also of the person you want to see next time you look. Then go find a game that lets you play the closest version of that. Get good at it. Then play it into existence. How your personality changes can be up to you. Who you become is up to you. Stay friends with the person in the mirror. Thank you.